Hey, yo, what it did, y'all? It's no name. Let's get right into it, y'all. Stop being poor. Genuinely, stop being poor. It's just that simple, right? It's just that simple to just no longer be poor. That's why we're all in debt, right? It's just that simple. And you might be thinking, whoa, what's clicked on a video gaming video? Why am I hearing about being poor? And it's because I feel like sometimes we bring over tendencies that come with being poor in real life to being poor in video games. And it's just poor rather than broke. And we'll talk later in the video about the detailed difference between those two terms, at least in how I use them, because I find poor to be a mindset and not a state of being. And that's very important because when I say stop being poor, I'm telling you to stop hindering yourself because of your current financial limitations and think about where you're headed, which admittedly this advice can be used for real life as well, but it's a little bit harder to put in practice. But we're talking about this in video games because I got asked again on stream recently, which no flame to this guy. It's a new player just trying to have fun in a game, but I get this question maybe 3 times a season in every ARPG I've played. I've had this question in even non-ARPGs I play where it's like, hey, I'm struggling with insert thing here. Can you find me something that's not as expensive? And in this case of Torchlight in particular, guy asking about switching off of Thea 3 mind control because it was expensive and asked if there's any better ideas. And I realized I don't even know what to recommend that person because they're too new to the game to recommend them other stuff. And it kind of prompted this whole idea, at least for the like 97th time. Because again, this is not a new phenomenon to me. My channel's different now and I can talk about it. So let's talk a little bit. How do we define expensive, right? Like if I told you a bill was expensive, what do you think that means? And you'll notice your answer and my answer probably differ a good bit. Your answer and your friend's answer probably also differ a good bit, right? This term expensive is super relative, just like it is in real life. And the problem with this in video games, right? Because in real life, it's literally just a function of you make X amount of money. But you'll see that this comparison that I'm about to make the video games is very similar, just harder to apply, right? Harder to apply. But we've got to rip this bandage off now if we're going to grow throughout the rest of this video. If you find yourself complaining about things being too expensive in a game, it's you complaining because you don't know enough to be able to make enough money in the game, to generate enough resources in the game to get to the thing that you want. Which, you're new. Or you just haven't learned yet. That's fine. But we have to stop complaining about, oh, I'm too poor. Oh, I don't have enough currency. Blah, blah, blah. Go figure out how to make it happen. It's that simple, right? And the reason I say it this way is because oftentimes when I get asked this question, it's people coming to me from the best available option for people who don't know anything, right? And we're going to talk about like what I mean when I say but people who don't know anything and like the best option for that, right? Because the thing about gaming, especially nowadays, there's among the many like old head takes about gaming that I don't necessarily always love and whatnot, one of the things that I do firmly agree with is that the past 8 years or so has been really poor to people's discovery process in gaming, right? There no longer is really discovery now, right? A game comes out and you are looking up a guide. You are expected to have looked at a guide. You're getting backseated to hell and back, left, right, and center by people who did look up guides, wondering why you didn't look up a guide, right? And if you don't look up this guide, you just fall behind. You'll be low DPS, you'll be poor, you'll be wasting resources, or this, that, the third, etc., etc., etc. You must use guides. Everybody must keep up with everybody all the time, right? That's the current state of gaming. And I considered making a video separately on that, and I still might at some point. But it does feed this point as well, which is that you are feeling poor and feeling like things are too expensive because you don't know enough to deviate from what people who don't know enough do, right? In the case of Torchlight Infinite in particular, this has to do with the very, very limited scene of builds that are available in the West with good information output on them. Similar idea in Path of Exile. There are a number of builds in PoE that you might or might not have heard about, but the reality is it's really easy to take somebody who doesn't know much about the game and funnel them towards Pox's RF or previously Enki's Arc Witch, right? Because it's well documented, well written, well upkept information about the game. And the biggest resource that a new player can have is knowledge, not currency. All you get if you give a new player currency is them wasting that money horrifically, right? You give them money, they spend it, they come back to you, hey, I'm broke and I still can't do anything. And you look over like, wait, I just gave you all that money. What do you mean you can't do anything with it? Because they spent it all. It's the same thing in real life, by the way. They talk about this with like, giving poor people excessive amounts of money. They'll just go waste it eventually because they don't have monetary habits built up, knowledge around how to actually build, maintain, use that money. It's all the same thing, right? But you need that information if you're going to leave the meta behind, quote unquote. If you're going to leave the expensive thing behind, quote unquote, right? I mean, then you'll find out that things just get expensive because they're expensive and it's a whole other thing. But we'll get to that. So talking about needing information and how to leave the nest, you need to actually learn things. Obviously, if you know more than the populace, you can do things for cheaper or do things, you can stretch your money longer than most people, right? You can prioritize different things. Except, again, in the situation in which someone has decided that they are poor and struggling, they are either lacking knowledge or they aren't willing to struggle. And I'm so real when I say that you have to be willing to struggle if you're going to try to learn to be able to go around the corners, right? You're going to have some moments that aren't pretty, have to have some moments that aren't great. J. Cole said it himself. There's ugliness in the struggle, ugliness in success, beauty in the struggle, ugliness in the success, right? Can't believe I messed that up. I even had it written on my screen correctly. Anyways, that line is important because everybody talks about how nice it is when everything works, right? But no one really talks about what it looks like before it works, right? You see somebody with a build that's going crazy. What about before it was going crazy? What about when they were cooking up the idea? What about when they were figuring it all out, right? Where were you at in that process? And the answer is you probably weren't looking because it's ugly over there, right? But it's a beautiful process. You got to learn to fall in love with that process if you're trying to learn and trying to grow. Right? Because everyone wants to play that cheaper build, that off meta build. They want to be cool and they want to be fancy until that means playing a build where there are only two people. My friend Cataclysm, he plays a build in Torchlight where he has one other English speaker to bounce off of, to talk back and forth with regarding their build, because no one plays that build, right? So you either got to do the testing yourself or talk to the other person doing the testing. And it's only two of you, right? There's not a fully written out guide that's perfect and everything's been tested by hundreds and thousands of people. Nope, none of that. Or Crackling Lance. You gotta be the one to find out that it's 30 div plus into the Crackling Lance and the skill still sucks, right? Or, if you're my friend, love the skill, right? You've gotta be a special type of Twisted to want to learn in that way, but you gotta do it if you're gonna try to go around the corners, right? Because otherwise, all you're really doing is hoping that you're first to something new and fancy and shiny and insane. And I do say first because once it catches traction and people realize that it's new and shiny and insane, everybody else who don't know how to create floods right in and drives those prices right up. And if you're late, you're late. That happened with Wilt Sparkle last season in Torchlight, happened with the rune crafting stuff in Settlers League, right? Like you got to either be first. Ricky Bobby said it. So, you're either first or you're last, right? And being last in this instance means you just got to pay a buttload of currency and no one wants to deal with that, right? So people are always there looking to take the thing that you think you found. And that's the crazy part, right? Because let's say you aren't fast enough because you don't know enough or know where to look for these things. Well, now you're back to square one all over again. And this brings me back to the starting point of this video. Stop being poor. When I talked about having a different definition of poor, the important thing about the difference between poor and broke is that broke people currently don't have it, right? You open your stash and you realize you ain't got no currency. You open your wallet, you ain't got no cash. You open your bank account, your money ain't there because it ain't payday yet, right? That's broke. So what's poor? Poor means you ain't gonna change nothing. You complain how you ain't got no money, but you ain't really trying to get your bag up. That's poor. Poor is defeating yourself before leaving the starting line in order to grow when you're trying to grow further, right? So when I say stop being poor, what I mean is that you got to get your bands up in some way, shape, or form. This, again, I'm talking in game, but understand this is advice that I've been told and follow in real life as well, right? You got to get your bands up if you're trying to get to the things that you want / need, right? And I do say want or need because who cares if you just want it? You want it. Who cares? Is what it is, right? You got to get your knowledge up on how to get the bands so you can get them, right? Or you got to go digging to go get your knowledge up, right? It might not be as simple as take a course, watch a couple videos. It might be a lot more. Are you willing to get in there and are you willing to look around through the weeds of what people did? Are you willing to get in them trenches yourself and figure it out? And that's the thing. A lot of people aren't, and I don't fault you for it, right? That's hard, but that is what you're going to have to do if you want to, grow anywhere, right? If you're trying to grow, if you're trying to be special, you got to be willing to do the extra work. You got to fall in love with the process of getting there, not just the results of what comes at the end. And then you'll run into my problem, which is that I hate the results, but I love the process. But that's a different thing altogether, right? The big thing with going into this, not being poor thing and this mentality shift is that you're going to have to change how you evaluate the value of your work. And that's kind of the last thing that we're going to have to talk about here. Evaluating your work is very important. The idea of success is super fluid, right? There's no strict definition of what is successful and unsuccessful, right? There are successful failures and there are failures that are successes. And that sounds really weird, but it's a competition driven thing, right? When I think about my time playing chess, for example, it's considered successful to me if I'm able to force myself to play and learn a new scheme, a new opening, a new mid-game strategy, or I'm practicing an end game that I'm still learning, right? Even if I don't win, the success is in the fact that I committed to the thing that I am working on. That's the success for that instance. As we go on, the success is going to be committing to it and winning, but you have to start somewhere, right? I said schema earlier, by the way, it's system. I've been watching too much sports stuff lately and it's all schemes in sports. It's systems in chess, but you have to decide where your benchmark for success is, right? Because why are you measuring yourself, your progress, your value off of what other people are doing when other people are in a different place than you realistically? Obviously, from an absolutism standpoint, the guy who kills all Ubers is further along than the guy who only kills 4 of them. But maybe the guy who kills all Ubers has kill all Ubers as the baseline for success because they've been doing it forever. And you, the guy who's never killed Ubers, kills 4, and that can be a success because prior you hadn't killed any yet. So you've grown somewhere in that process, right? Set goals and expectations that are relative to your current status that then grow you as a player and as a person. And a specific framework for this, right? To be able to have something to take away to work on and look up a little bit further on the topic. They're called SMART goals. You possibly learned about them in school. You hear about them in business. They're all over the place. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals, which I'm not going to detail all of what the SMART goal system is. You can look that part up on your own, but I'm really talking about this achievability part, right? I feel like so much of the damage done mentally with being poor, right, is this achievability part. You feel the need to do something that is so far out of your reach because everyone who isn't you is. When in reality, you might need to jump a couple rungs on your way there. Eventually you'll be there, but don't shoot immediately for there. Right? They used to say, I have a line that's been burned with me since I was a child. shoot for the moon, because at least if you miss, you'll end up among the stars, right? And what that means is that you are shooting for that big goal, but understand that there are successes in the failure. There are other things. There are partial conditions in which you do gain something and you do grow and you do take from that experience. You just have to give yourself time. It's not going to happen immediately. It might. And that's the thing. So one last piece to leave you with here is the understanding that your growth will happen. It has no choice but to happen should you decide that it will, right? I would say that I will win. Might not be tomorrow, but I will win. There's no choice in it. And this is in games. This is in real life. This is in business. This is in anything ever. You will win. Just might not be tomorrow. Stick with it. Be willing to put the work in, though. Be willing to acknowledge when the progress is different than what you expected and still continue to take the progress and the learnings as they come, even if it comes at a little bit of risk. Because the most important thing is it's a video game, right? I know a lot of what I'm saying has corollaries to real life and whatnot, but remember, we're talking about a video game, right? Making a mistake in a video game does not cost you your house, does not cost you your car, does not stunt your ability to eat unless you are gambling. Don't do that, right? If you're gambling your cash away, that's a different problem, right? But like, you are not costing yourself your livelihood when you take a risk in a video game with entirely fake money. You're just not. Take the risk, learn from it, improve upon it. Stop being poor, because poor people stop themselves from ever leaving the starting line. Thank you all for listening. I hope you took something from this. Otherwise, I did this for nothing, but except for me, really. I love talking about this type of stuff and helping people. And I realized that this is the type of answer that's really hard for me to give on stream when I'm asked about, the solutions to being poor in a game, or wanting to switch in and out of builds because you're feeling poor when you're chasing a build type, when it's really about, it's this type of like mindset thing that's a lot more important to hit on than it is me giving you a direct, simple answer, because the direct, simple answer often does not actually solve your problem in these games. It just temporarily delays it until you run into the problem again, right? Is what it is. If you want more of me, by the way, Twitch, Discord, those links are in the description. Sometimes these conversations and whatnot do happen as like excerpts on stream, or I do inspire myself off of this to talk about it here. So, is what it is. Anyways, thank y'all for checking it out. If you fuck with the video, like, comment, subscribe, really helps your boy out, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.